I think the word that you were looking for earlier about building that culture, I think what the correct, my idea of Telpo, just being there for the short time and seeing it from the outside, I think what they've created there is a little ecosystem.
Oh, nice.
Because it's such a very creative ecosystem. And, you know, my experience there with, obviously with the Spanish-speaking students is, it's not different than what I usually do, but I do appreciate that when you're in a dual language school, that everyone in the school is participating in learning and understanding in both languages. And also when I'm at different schools where there's different demographics, there's maybe more African American children and some newcomers that I've worked with, I tend to give my lessons both in English and Spanish. And what I love about it is everyone starts to learn Spanish. And everyone is coming up to me, greeting me in Spanish. Hola, Mr. Luis. Hola, Señor Luis. Hola, ¿cómo están? And it becomes kind of contagious that everyone wants to be involved in the dialogue, in talking with each other. So in Telpochcalli itself, I think that ecosystem is very unique in my mind, that they've built such a beautifully creative world there. I've been a teaching artist for a long time now. And I've developed a kind of a pattern of getting our young artists into seeing the creative side of it, like even if it's just a simple drawing that I have them do, and then I break the drawing down into a mathematical proportions, and then I tell them, look, you've just divided a surface into 15 different parts by making these patterns. So they look at it and they say, what do you mean? So I break down the actual concept of, look at this grid, look how you divided the panel into 15 parts, and now you're using math to make this work of art. And then they start understanding, oh, I see how we're measuring, and then we're doing this and this. And they speak to me, they bring it back to me. So I absolutely love doing that. And then when we start painting, it all goes into mayhem, because I start, letting them play with colors, and then I say, you guys are playing with chemistry now. I say, what? I say, yeah, all these colors I use, and you're mixing different chemicals and mixing different shades using different chemicals. And they're like, oh, is this dangerous? No, don't eat it, but it's not going to blow up on you. I promise you that. So, they really get like, it opens up a different part of their mind when they start realizing, oh yeah, I did do that, and I did mix this color. So, and I say, well, that's phthalocyanine, so, you have to be careful with that. So what's phthalocyanine? Just don't eat it. A lot of the newcomers are from South America. Mm-hmm. Most of the established families here in Chicago are Mexican. Mm-hmm. There is a huge difference in the cultures. So what happens, what I've noticed within our groups and what I love seeing is that the young Mexican students will engage the newcomers, the South American, and bring them into this idea of, oh, this is the alebrijes, this is what this is about. Mm-hmm. This is Dia de los Muertos, this is what this is about. Mm-hmm. And those young newcoming Spanish speakers are learning these things. And then the South American, the Venezuelans, the Brazilians, they're teaching the young Mexican students their culture. And that fascinates me because they're talking about maracas, they're talking about different instruments, they're talking about different music. And to just hear that conversation, and I love just listening to it, it is absolutely a microcosm of what utopia should be, because they're just young artists sharing their cultures. This is how we do it in my house. This is what we eat. I brought this. What is that? That's an alebrije, and so on and so on. And it becomes this whole engagement. And I was lucky enough to be in rooms where this first happens. And I absolutely, I was like on cloud nine, listening and paying attention to this. It was just a thing of beauty.
Having students coming from various countries and migrating here, have you found that you've looked into your practices and found a way to ensure that they get to see aspects of their culture integrated into your teaching? And I'll build for myself. During music, we're discussing the orchestra. We're talking about all the different components of the instruments and everything. But when I show them an orchestra, I show them Gustavo Dudamel, right? I show them Il Sistema. I want them to see and have that feel like, hey, it's part of my culture too. Like we enjoy listening to this down here. And for many students that I did have that came from Venezuela, they recognized some of the aspects of them, like, oh wow, like, and lit up because I was talking about specifically Venezuela, and I do the same with Mexico, and I've made sure to put an emphasis on Afro-Latinos throughout the school environment. So have you shifted practices to make sure that that inclusion is there for students to see themselves represented in the teaching?
Yes, I have added a lot of the Venezuelan, what I call the pantheon of artists, and talk about their work and talk about what and how they achieved their work. So it's, instead of doing the typical Mexican art, just Mexican artists, I have a dialogue with different visual artists from Venezuela that we incorporate, and I show them works of theirs to say, this is Mapeco, and this is the work they did. This is who's the other big artist? I think it's Julimes, Venezuelan artist, that I show them their work so they can see that, hey, this is something that comes from my world. So, and then I show the Mexican students the Diego Rivera's, the Frida Kahlo's, and then I show them different artists that aren't as well known as Mexico to make sure they get a full rounded education on artists. But I tend not to lecture and talk about those things. I want just quick show, quick flashes. I want them to develop their work. So I give them more demonstration time and let them go be creative little gods and do what they need to do.
Okay.
So less lectures, more doing.
Another part of the growing trend in arts education, make sure that the students are hands-on, even more so. I think we're acting more as facilitators now and making sure that, hey, this is not me telling you how to create your art. This is, you get to go and do it however you want to. I'm just here to give you guidance of how you can go ahead and go the next steps from your initial start, or to give you a push in the right direction, if guidance, I shouldn't say push, but guidance in the right direction, right? Sometimes, and we have to be reflective in the words that we use with students, correct? And I think to make sure that we're hitting all aspects of it, we want to make sure that touching on every aspect. So I know we focused a lot on our Latino populations in school, but also having schools with higher numbers of African American students in there as well. And then the demographics of students who may get lost in there because their percentage is that much lower in a school environment. So we want to make sure that we're bringing in all aspects of it, like, hey, this is Hebrew Brentley, and he collaborated with Chance the Rapper, and being able to go ahead and get them to understand those connections of the arts as well, because it's not a singular focus, right?
So our art and gardening class is STEMmy, steamy stuff, right? Because a lot of what we're connecting to is horticultural language, it's science language, and it's across a lot of disciplines. So since we're working with elementary students, they're kind of, they haven't gotten there in terms of like school curriculum yet, but you still need them to understand that to plant a plant, the roots need to I mean, they know the roots go down, but they don't necessarily know why, right? So we've thought an awful lot about making everything tactile learning, and I think there's a lot of intersections, cross connections between science, art, and arts when it comes to tactile things and experiencing things. So whether we're having kids make independent research projects with garden-based collages, or whether we're teaching them the parts of a plant, there's a good chance that we're touching something, experiencing something, and engaging them in, there's a specific word for the type of dialogue we do. We're asking more questions to get them to find the answers to the things they already know, right? We're not trying to lecture, we're trying to keep everything as open and student-driven as possible. And I don't think our kids would listen to a traditional lesson and absorb things as they have when we let them touch all the dirt and all the compost and all the plants and all the art supplies, right? But they're in charge of those things too. So the more ownership and the more tactileness, the better the outcomes are for them. In some of my in-school programs, I know it's not the topic, but we have the same issue because this is all around Chicago, right? And I've seen that for certain kids, this is the part of their day that's the easiest, right? They can kind of figure out a lot of the instructions through body language and through the extra time that the arts gives you to communicate with the people who can communicate with you and your groups and nearby you. And, everybody speaks visual art and other forms of art to some degree, right? You can tell your whole story without having to articulate it with the, like the level of irritating accuracy that speaking tends to require of us. So I think when you just give kids an hour and a prompt and some freedom, they do want to bring in their stories, and they're always so proud of themselves. And I think art is uniquely positioned to help us to do that. Say one more thing about how the arts integration moves across languages, because we're talking about it like across English and across Spanish, but an awful lot of what we've done again is to move it between the disciplines of science and the culture and language of children, which are just not the same thing, right? Yeah. So I think it's also moving into these conversations between like professionals and youth, and art is just such a springboard and it just moves things together so flawlessly. I don't think, I don't know what else does that. Not even science lab experiments do that. That was something that we talked about in our school-wide PD in the summer, or maybe it was just before fall school started. But there's a lot of potential for the school. The school is already a place where so many community members come every single day, and they're coming there for other resources, and there is a sense of community. There's this idea that a lot of thinking and creating starts at school and then kind of disseminates out into the community. And I think we've got a lot of opportunities to use that mentality to create some more of that utopia. It sort of takes a little time to do the work and then learn to show the work, right?
Yes, yes. And getting the community to want to engage and come in. Do you all offer opportunities for them to come into your school environment or put the information out there and fly and say, hey, we're hosting this at school, please stop by, or we'll do this outdoors so where people can see what we're doing in our learning environments?
I do think that garden that we're creating could become one of these outdoor accessible visible spaces. In another season, it's going to look real good and really welcoming, right?
So I'm old enough to remember when school was very much a part of the community. Unfortunately, it's got to the point where, in our case, it's separate. It's not y'all, it's not you, it's us. We're a team. We're supposed to work together for these kids.
Yes.
So how I see all this artwork around here, this really is a utopia to me. I wonder where our kids can see their artwork in school, where their parents come in and they can see their artwork. Because keep it real with you, we have to fight our kids to take their art to here. They're like, can I take it home? I'm like, no, we got to take it. So they can't understand that. No, it was going to be on display for a bunch of other people, but having it in the building, that it's like a sense of worth. It's it increases their sense of self-identity. Trust me, it does wonders for their confidence too. As you can see, this is from the gardening club. We got a little bit of everything. Recently, we had a very rough winter, so we haven't been able to be outside as much. So what we've been doing with our students, using a lot of visual art, and we want them to have it where, what do you want to see in your garden? Because this is our school community garden. And, you know, typically you wouldn't see a dinosaur in a garden. But we let them cook.
There's really a lot of different projects represented here. At the beginning of the year, we asked them to draw out their ideal garden, and we've got so many apple trees and exotic fruits, very ambitious stuff for Chicago. Then we spent weeks talking about how compost is made. How are we going to create this resource that is the foundation of everything out of garbage, right? And we got some opportunities to clean up our school, collect wood, collect sticks, and Mr. Hawkins taught them everything they needed to know about lasagna gardening. Of course, these layers, visualizing it really helped, and so did memory, right? Having to say it every week, and now they all know where compost comes from and how to make it.
Every day, so of course, because I'm with Kate, but you know, in my role in the school, I see the kids on a regular basis, so I can be walking in the hallway, like, Mr. Hawkins, can I compost this? Yes. So they'll run outside for recess, they'll run from the playground around the bend to the raised beds and throw stuff in there. Oh, the kid's trying, no, he's cool, he's doing what I told him to do. He's straight. So as of right now, most of the kids in the building that work with us, we're called the compost crew.
That's what's up.
So that's something that we built. It took about, 8 weeks to...
It took a long time, but now they know everything. They're never going to forget.
We figured it out.
And up here, these are a whole bunch of mostly native stems that came from my yard, and they are having a rough time as they get drier and drier. But we just gave the kids a way to present them. They all picked their own plants, and then they went about identifying them from a list. Because as much as we want to talk about food and science, etc., talking about the original native environment and which things feed pollinators and which things are part of the ecosystem and which things might not be is still important. And then for the whole of winter, we weren't going outside and fixing up those raised beds anymore. What we were doing was more of an open lab situation. We had a bunch of sort of dated art resource books and collage stuff, and kids love silk flowers that have been used. These were so popular. And then like basic things. And so, you know, the challenge is how can you keep yourself interested in what you're doing for 2 hours? You have all this stuff to get inspired by. You have all this stuff to work by. No, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but there are some good ideas here. And then they really went for it. And so for weeks we had this really good routine, this rest routine, right? Because we had to restore ourselves while we were restoring the soil in the cold. And that's where most of this came from. I joked before that if you give kids enough freedom, they will find their own cardboard boxes and dioramas will just happen. But it does seem to be true. And there's just a lot of pieces that are about pollinators and butterflies, and I think that might be one of our next areas of research because they're just so much fun and so important.
What we wanted to bring into our classroom was this brand new language. We do have a few of our English speakers in our classroom, but most of our students in our after-school class are Spanish speakers, and we wanted to make sure that they left our classroom on a daily basis having fun, being creative, and our students love to draw, paint, color. We would just open up our closet and they just want to grab things and just be creative. And what we would, though, make sure that we always did at the end of the day is, did they learn some new words that they could add to their vocabulary, whether it was in English or in Spanish? And again, it's amazing just to see both of our large demographics learning a language that they would never experience before, or not yet anyway. We hope that they can, take it further as they go through it, but making sure that they left with new words that they could add and feel comfortable in using them, not just in our class, but when they leave our class for that day. I think in our neighborhood, because there's been so much disinvestment around the neighborhood, that we don't, within the school, we have that love of the arts and everything. Outside of our school, it's hard to get them into our school. So that's my utopia. If we have more buy-in from right down the block or 2 blocks away, and just get more families out there than the ones that we usually typically see. Yeah. But I think the buy-in is within our school, and teachers love it when we have CAPE and the Lyric and Chicago Orchestra and all of that, but we need more from our neighborhood.
And the student discourse and dialogue, right? That's what we're advocating for more now within a lot of school environments, of having the students be able to go ahead and lead classes and engage in dialogue with each other, and have the facilitator, educator in the room step back a little bit more so that they can take more ownership of that. So that's part of this process as well, right? And that's been described throughout here. I know you said you had something you want to contribute from that as well, please.
Yes, we see similar things with our families, who are established Mexican families who have been here, and then the newcomers from different countries, and just learning. So in our program, we have a ballet folklorico that's been around for 10 years. We actually have a costume up there, and we also have a mariachi band. But seeing all of the newcomers from different countries engage in these traditions with our students, it's very cool. And I loved how when CAPE integrated and came into our district it was 2020, right? 2020. What a year to start an after-school program. Yeah. But they really went off the student interest, especially for our community classes where the parents were involved, and seeing the parents and the students do ballet folklorico together, and performing it here, like even just coming to the Cape space on our field trips, it's a big deal, even though we're 30 miles away, to come to Chicago. For some kids that have never been there, they didn't know it's a train ride away or an hour drive away. Yeah. And just having their art displayed here. And we also partnered with local coffee shops and a local museum to make sure that their art is integrated throughout the community as well, and having exhibitions throughout. But one of our highlights is definitely having students and families come here on a community field trip and being able to share all of that together.
I am the music teacher and fine arts liaison at Douglas Taylor Elementary School, and so I also work with our community group class with amazing artist Jessica Mueller. And throughout our time this year, well, actually I'll say for the past 3 years, we've been focusing on building community as not just a word in the school, but to involve the surrounding community all around. So what we do is we invite families in to every student in the school to come in and come alongside parents to create. So we've done sugar skulls for Dia de los Muertos, and we've created arts based off of traditions, what's been important to you, what is significant in your life. We've made connections of both visual art and music connections of, hey, while you're creating, does this remind you of something? Do we allow people to share out their family histories and stories throughout? Right above here is one of the amazing piñatas that was made for we've called it our 3rd annual Winter Holiday Festival. So now, we originally were buying our piñatas, and we decided to finally say, let's just make them ourselves. Excuse me. So our parents came in and were diligent, along with Jessica, and created these huge ones, and then the students get to break them at the end of our Winter Holiday Assembly evening gala. And creating T-shirts, as well as everything that you see here, in addition to our student work, which is also spread around as well.